Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Govern. So this is actually part 2 of a video, so if you haven't seen part 1, please make sure you do that. Each video I think stands alone, but do go to the description down below and you'll be able to see part 1, and I think that'll give you a little bit better background. So in the studio with me today, again, I'm honored to have Brian Heywood, who has been so involved in a lot of the political stuff in Washington State lately, and anybody who's paid attention to the Public Disclosure Commission knows that you have been supporting a lot of Republican conservative candidates around the state, but also the Initiative Project. And what I'm hoping to do for my viewers here today is to give, this is part 2 of the video, but to kind of explain what got you so engaged and involved in the political process in Washington, how we got to these 11 initiatives, and so just, I guess let's just start. We had talked about why you moved to Washington and what got you involved in some of the political process initially, but let's talk about a little bit more on how some of that business experience, I think, has carried over into the political process.
Well, as I'd mentioned before, one of the big things about that was attractive as Washington was, as a business owner, there was no state income tax. Mm-hmm. And immediately after we moved here, Bill Gates Sr. tried to get an income tax passed. I thought, right. Oh no, yeah. We moved here for naught. And then the reasonable people of Washington said, no, we actually don't want an income tax, and it was then defeated several times. And so this, again, sort of reaffirmed our decision to be here. But there was this constant threat. And then the capital gains tax was passed. Mm-hmm. And it just was a never-ending assault, and it didn't seem like there was enough infrastructure fighting back against people that just wanted to keep destroying this. And so one, that sort of raised my level of awareness and my desire to be involved higher than it had been. Mm-hmm. And so we took a stab at trying to get an initiative for getting the capital gains tax repealed. Mm-hmm. And actually there were a couple of attempts we made at that. Mm-hmm. And one of them, we started this year. We got on the radar of Nick Hanauer, right. A billionaire that doesn't want anybody else to ever have success. And he was trying to shame people mm-hmm. who were supportive of this. And if you want to see a really terrible picture of me, go to wallofshame.com, which is something he funded to try to shame anybody that would fund this process. Right. And one of the most interesting things in the process, though, was not only was there this backlash, kind of this classist backlash from the left, anti-capitalism backlash from the left, but on the right, it had very much become trapped by, I would say, consultants and people that charge Republicans a lot of money to just lose. Mm-hmm. And it turned out it was going to cost about $6 million to get one initiative on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And that just seemed crazy to me. $6 million. That's more than both of the last 2 governor candidates raised combined.
On the Republican side.
On the Republican side.
Yeah. And
so I sort of pulled back from that effort, and I didn't think it made sense. But then I would have to say that an important part of this whole process was the experience I had at Roland. Mm-hmm. And that I need to go back a little bit. Sure. If we do that. Roland is a Japanese, many people know it, and most of them are over 45, although we've really made a turnaround in trying to appeal to a younger audience. But Roland was a historic brand. All the cool songs that came out of the 80s, most likely there was some sort of Roland instrument that was involved in making whatever that sound, or the popping sound, or Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing, the first part of that. These were all sounds that came from Roland machines. Mm-hmm. But the brand had lost its way, and it's a Japanese brand. We had been an investor in the company for about 8-9 years when the president came to us and said, I need to make changes, and it's bigger than I know how to do. Can you help us? And I trust Tayo is the name of our company. I trust you guys because you've been an investor and you've never done anything hostile, and I think you might be able to help us. Mm-hmm. So we worked with them and took the company private for about 7 years. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things that happened, in fact, if you'll see, I'm wearing a shirt that says Unleash, mm-hmm. right? And I wear it all the time, and I have more than one, so it's not just the same shirt. my staff at work, I think I only have one version of it. But this came about because the president, the Japanese president of Roland, came and said, Brian, there's this word in English, unleash. What do you think about this word? And I said, well, how do you want to use it? And he said, well, there are people inside the company that have been sort of trapped, and I want to unleash all their power, right? Unleash their thinking and their creativity. And I loved it. Immediately, I loved this concept. And part of the reason for me was that I had started early on in my career as a consultant. And that meant that I went into different companies, and I thought when I was younger that what that would also mean was that we would come in with these wonderful ideas, share them with everybody, they would all suddenly become enlightened, unicorns would start coming out of the factory, and they would start making money, and it would all be great.
The promise of a consultant, right?
That's the promise, and that's what many of them, unicorns is a part of many of the contracts. But the truth is that the consultants seldom, because you've seen other things in other places, maybe you bring ideas in. But more often, the real value of a good consultant is that they are able to go into a company and help unleash all the ideas and all the people that are trapped by bureaucracy, by fear, by power harassment, by whatever the barriers are within a company. Good consultants help unleash that energy that's within a company. And it's something that I had learned over the course of being stupid as a consultant. And as you get wiser and you see more things, you see, oh, the power, the answer to most organizations is already within the organization. And so at Roland, the CEO said, this is my concept, I want to do this. I thought, that is fantastic. And he began to then systematically try to unleash people in the company. And I was trying to be his right-hand man in that sense by doing it, coordinating with some of the overseas people as well and unleashing them. So there was an unleashing both in Japan and overseas, and then we worked together to make it more of a one company.
And I'm assuming there's a Japanese word for this then. We talked in the
no,
last...
No, well, yes, there is.
Okay.
There is. Tokihanasu.
Okay, all right.
But it's sort of like unleashing your dog, right? And so that I'll say Tokihanasu, and people like look at me funny.
Yeah.
Why are you using that word? And then I'll say unleash, and they'll go, and then I'll explain what it means, and they'll go, oh, okay, I get this word. So the reason he was coming to me with unleash was because he liked unleash better than Tokihanasu, right?
Okay. So this is one of those situations when the Japanese word isn't as strong as the
Not as
English
strong.
word.
The English word was much, and that's on all the T-shirts, right? If that's where your measure of the power of the word, Tokihanasu, it wasn't Tokihanasu, it was unleash. And we saw that when you could unleash people within the organization, things you didn't expect to happen could happen. People were thinking on their own time, how could I do this, or what if we did that, and then just really interesting products and marketing campaigns and ideas came about because people felt unleashed. So now let's go back to the
political process.
Political
process. How does that apply? Yep.
And I was looking at this consultant-driven process that cost lots of money and was very divorced from the average citizen, took deep pockets from lots of different special interests and people. And it just didn't make sense. I mean, $6 million to get one initiative on the ballot. And that really sort of got my thinking going. And then it's fortuitous, serendipitous timing. About this time, a gentleman named Joel Ard, who is a very, very smart lawyer here in the state. And I believe that you need lawyers. They're not always respected people, but this guy's an interesting, good man. And he called me and several other, I think he might have called you as well, right? He called you with this idea, and he called myself, and he called Mike McGee over in Eastern Washington and said, hey, and he'd been studying the Washington Constitution. If the majority in the House and the Senate were to change, and we took these initiatives and got them qualified, and then took them to the legislature, they can pass them, and the governor can't veto them. They just become law. Well, that's interesting. Right? That's really interesting. I didn't know that process was there. And the Republicans have been in the minority for so long that
The thought isn't even.
No one's even thinking that way.
Right,
and,
right.
and the Democrats aren't thinking that way either because they don't need it. Anything that the Democrats want to get passed, it goes through the legislature and it can get passed.
Right.
And so this was sort of this dormant idea that was there. No need for that process. And in particular, this wasn't a Republican-Democrat issue. It was, there's some really stupid things that have happened.
Right.
And we don't have any way to correct it. Oh, wait, yes, we do. In this state, unlike many of the eastern states in the United States, Washington, with its initiative process, has a mechanism for the people to push back when one side becomes too heavy-handed.
Right.
And as I began to understand that and kind of become educated about it, well, this seemed like a really interesting way to make some very small fixes, not fundamental changes, but very small fixes in some of the stupid things that had happened. And again, the police chase was the one that really,
Right.
I couldn't believe, I just can't believe, still can't believe.
Right.
How can this be something that we passed as a law, that the police can't chase criminals? And it was so fundamentally stupid that then, you were part of some of these other early conversations.
Right, right.
Jim Walsh brought, I think, a very, very wise legislator. He
Right.
writes laws and has a very strong familiarity with the process. And I was under no illusions that I was smart enough to do all the writing and the constructing and all that. And then Joel Ard wrote some of the laws. And
Some of the initiative drafts.
The initiative drafts, yeah.
Yeah, and Sharon Hannick did, and other good people, yeah.
Well, so there was a group of people, but
Right.
there was this, initially, this sort of group of us that got together and said, this is an interesting idea. Why don't we
Right.
do something about it? And of course, it takes money. And one of the challenges, I think, is the money piece, right?
Right.
If you go out and raise money, you're spending all your time raising the money. I don't think it's been fair, but I think Tim Eyman has been, I think he's been a champion of average, everyday people, but he's also had his name besmirched. Because
Sure, he gets maligned all the time
because
because
of the
he
money,
was
right?
making money on it, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
And so, well, maybe if we get rid of that process, if I could help fund it, that might take that money piece out, and then we're not out asking, this isn't to make money. This is to make some fundamental changes that really would impact average, everyday people in the state.
And that's where I know we talked about the 11 initiatives, but I mean, one of the things I've liked about them is that none of these initiatives really have this institutional lobbyist sort of special interest focus. They're mostly things that the average person would recognize, say, hey, I'd prefer that, or I'd like that, or that makes sense to me. But there's nobody lobbying for these things in Olympia. So that's kind of what makes a lot of these initiatives, I think, pretty unique and very attractive to the average people.
There's, if the mortgage exemption, right? I think this one was designed by Senator Braun originally.
Right, right.
And it's a simple concept. It says, first $250,000 of value on your home should be excluded from state property taxes.
Right.
That's a very wise and reasonable thing to me.
Right.
It doesn't completely address, California tried to address this with Prop 13,
Right.
which froze taxes in place when you bought the property, so they didn't go up
Keep
eternally.
escalating you out of your home, yeah.
And one of the real problems that California had before Prop 13, and I think we'll see it more often here in Washington State, is that when your property values keep going up and up and up and up and up, then the poor pension, the family that's living on a pension, they've retired, they own their own home, they think they're safe, but then their property taxes go up so high.
It's even higher than the original mortgage sometimes.
Yes, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
can't afford to even pay their property taxes.
Right.
And that's really devastating. And,
Right.
and there's no one out there advocating for it, right?
Right.
This is just a quiet, simple solution. And if on the other hand, if you have a $3, $4, $5 million house, okay, you get your exemption on $250,000, but it's nothing. It's
Right.
minuscule compared to the impact it is if you have a $500,000 house, right?
And especially since we're talking about home ownership, right? The value of
Correct.
home ownership, it has a big impact on people, especially entry-level people getting into.
And I believe it impacts apartment families as well, because if your landlord, if his taxes go way up, then they're going to get passed on to you. You'll see it coming through in the rent. It
Right.
just is a fact. That's just how it's going to be.
Right.
So by sort of keeping and reducing and lowering the cost of ownership and or renting. I think this should have a net positive impact on people all over the state.
So essentially, I mean, this is what, you know, we've talked about it. Your name, I know I mentioned your name's on the front top of every initiative packet that's out there that we're collecting signatures on. Your name is obviously in the PDC and in fact, because you fund anytime you say "Let's Go Washington PAC," it says sponsored by Brian Heywood. That's a PDC rule, you know, the Public Disclosure Commission, and so your name's out there, very, very visible on this project. What would you want to let people know? Because I know I've been talking a lot about getting people volunteering, collecting signatures. We're coming down to the last 6-7 weeks or so of collecting those signatures. What would be your message to people out there right now who, you know, elections are going to be over, they can maybe volunteer and help? What would you want to make sure that we tell people right now?
Well, there's a couple of pieces. As I reflect on that, I mean, putting my name there sort of potentially endangers my family and sort of
yeah, you got a target
involves
on
me
you.
and potentially puts a target on. It
Sure.
shouldn't. I'm doing something that I think is good for a lot of people. Or cooperating, but I've had to put myself out there a little bit, and I don't know that that's my desire wasn't to suddenly have my name in lights. But the thing I would take from it is, if you're going to make a difference, you can't just sit back.
Right.
You have to get involved, and I think if people want to make a difference in this state, we've been fortunate enough to have this mechanism that allows us to give initiatives both to the people and to the state. And so on these particular 11 initiatives, one of the great opportunities is for everyday citizens who vote to come and sign the initiative, and you get to help make these laws or fix the laws to a way that is back to a more reasonable place.
And that, I think, resonates when you tell people, let's fix what's broken. You know, having collected a lot of signatures myself, that resonates with a lot of people.
There's an empowerment.
Right, yeah, exactly. And when they look through them, they say, these are very reasonable. Why would I not sign it? If they sign one, my experience has been 90% of the time they sign all 11. Right. And so, but now's the time, if you haven't signed them, you know, make sure you get out and sign them now. Yeah. More importantly, even if you have signed them or you're about ready to sign them, when you sign them, get another packet that's blank. Take it back home. Get your family to sign them at Thanksgiving. Get your business folk to sign them, and then just bring them back to one of the signing locations that we have on the Let's Go Washington website. You got a lot of locations there they can turn in packets to. So because now's the time, we got to process a lot of packets here. So get them signed and get them back to us.
We need your help and we need your support, right? I think when it comes to political, usually you get a phone call and they say donate, you know, whatever, $5 or $25 or $1,000, donate. I don't need anybody's donations. We're not doing this for money. What I need is people to get involved.
Yeah.
And secondly, I would say to people, at the state fair, I was at a booth and was asking people to sign, and the interesting thing, again, this is not a partisan issue.
Right.
We had people that you could kind of guess from the way they talked. Some were Republicans, some were Democrats. But we had a mix of people coming up and actually signing them because this has impacted people's lives.
Right.
Whether it's the parents who are afraid of what's going on in their school and they'd like to be more involved, whether it's people that just can't afford to drive their car to work every day and they can see the taxes are going to go up even more.
Right.
Whether it was people who had, 3 cars. I don't know. There used to be this saying that it's a recession when your neighbor loses your job. When you lose your job, it's a depression.
Right.
I don't know what the equivalent would be, but it's crime is bad when your neighbors get their catalytic converter stolen.
Right.
Crime is oppressive when your windows get smashed and your car gets robbed. Right. And people are feeling that. You would have people come in and talk and say, oh my gosh, the crime in my neighborhood is terrible.
Right.
In many of the Tacoma area and Federal Way and some of those places, people who had felt safe before didn't feel safe and they needed someone to talk to. And so I think people will find, if you get involved in this and you take these initiatives, people are willing to sign them because they want to be part of something.
Right.
And it's meaningful because it's not just here's your opinion. We get this qualified, and we need 324,517 signatures, but we're shooting for more than that because some will be duplicates. And it needs to be someone that is registered to vote in Washington to sign it.
You can only sign it once.
You can only sign it once.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
Please,
like
yeah.
you can, like you should also only vote once.
Yeah, yeah, please, yeah.
But then let me talk about some outcomes. So
Sure.
tonight is the night, right? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we're filming this on election day, so we don't even
That's
know what the results are yet.
Got to go jump on Politico or something.
Right.
But let me give several scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So if the majority changes from Democrat control to Republican control, I believe then in January, it'll take them about 30 to 40 days to go through the whole process to review these bills. But we have the chance that all 11 of these, if they qualify, could be signed into law as early as February.
Right.
And so they could take place right away.
Right.
A second scenario would be that there's no majority. In fact, nothing changes. It's a complete, the Washington stays as blue as it ever has been. That's a scenario that's a possibility. In that case, there's a second bite at the apple, because if the legislature completely ignores all of these, they would then go on the ballot the following November next year.
Yeah, November 2023.
23.
Yep.
And so there's another bite at the apple there where we could possibly get these passed by voters.
Right.
And then the third piece that I think is kind of an interesting one is that, again, because these are not partisan issues, I suspect that if something happens that's sort of Republicans make a move, but not enough to take the majority. Many of these issues were bipartisan issues to begin with. And so the laws could go to the legislature. And I know some people are already talking about building bipartisan coalitions.
Right.
And that's what I would encourage people also to be involved in, talking to their legislator.
Right.
If we get these qualified, there could be some bipartisan coalitions so that several, if not all of them, get signed by a bipartisan legislature.
Right.
That would be a miraculous thing in the state. Instead of this sort of battle of throwing rocks at each other, here's some ideas. They don't penalize either side. They help everyday people.
Right.
Why don't we work together and get these signed, and we can do them quickly?
Right.
Right. And so I think there's several different outcomes that we could look for, and make it worth our time to spend going and collecting these signatures.
Well, and that's bringing me up to the most important part, which is get out there and get them signed. Telling everybody to make sure they get them signed. If you've already signed, get that packet back and get everybody else to get them signed, get them into us, because the deadline's coming up end of December. So we're in the early part of November right now, but those days come quick. There's holidays. The weather's harder. You're indoors more, which means you should be able to grab these packets and give them to walk them around to other people at Thanksgiving, all kinds of opportunities to get them signed and get them back to us with all the other volunteers that are working on this right now. If there's any message, I always end a lot of my videos where I say the future belongs to those who show up, and it's not just volunteers out there doing it or activists like me, but it's other people coming in and stepping in to get engaged. What would be your message just for our viewers to know from your perspective? What do you want them to know about what your goals are, who Brian Heywood is, why, what they need to know to help make some of these things happen? Because I think probably most of my viewers would probably agree with your goals and our goals in the state for liberty and freedom. But what would your message be to them if you were to leave them with anything right now?
I think you've already said it with the future belongs to those that show up. And the truth of that, like you say it as a tagline on your videos, and I watch it and I go, yeah, that's true. But when you go out and you talk to people, and if you take these initiatives and you talk to people, you find that people feel emasculated, not powerful. They don't know how to. This government just does its thing, and I don't have a say, and what I do and what I think nobody listens to and nobody cares. This matters in a way that you can personally be involved in shaping and fixing things that are broken in the state. You personally can be involved in helping other people find out as well. And not everybody knows about these, so we need it to go more viral so that we can get the signatures in order to get them approved. And that means that you have to show up. And it's easy to sit there and say, well, someone else is doing it. Oh, well, Brian's got it covered, or Glenn's got it covered, or Jim Walsh has got it covered, or whoever. But three of us signing it doesn't get us where we need to be, right? We need 400,000 people, and that means we need you to go tell 10 of your friends, and then those 10 friends tell 10 of theirs. It sounds like a multi-level marketing, but there's no money involved in this, right? That's
well,
how this.
There's your money involved.
There is my money. that
You
is.
aren't asking for any
But I'm
money.
not asking.
Yeah.
And it's people that care about it enough that say, man, this matters and it makes a difference. I'm going to tell them, I'm going to get 10 of my friends to sign.
Right.
And if each of those 10 friends get another 10 friends, this thing is completely doable.
Right. Well, with that, I guess we'll find out how election goes tonight as we're filming right now.
Right.
But Brian, thank you so much for coming in the studio.
Thank you, Glenn.
Really appreciate the opportunity. I hope as viewers out there, I hope that this helps you get to know who Brian Heywood is and why I'm such a fan of this project and a lot of the other things that I see him doing in the state. And again, just to reiterate, the future does belong to those who show up. And if you haven't voted by the time you've seen this video, it's too late, but you have to vote next time. But it's not too late for you to sign these initiatives, not too late for you to get involved. I've talked about them for a while. This is the primary thing I'm going to be working on between now and the end of December, and I hope it is for you as well. If you want to learn more, please go to wethegovern.com or go to letsgowa.com. That'll be the website for these initiatives if you want to find a location near you. Again, just stay engaged, stay involved. We've got a lot of exciting things that we have to work on and get involved in the future. And don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to share this video with others. And until next time, we will see you in the next video here.